There is a doorway in the side of a hill, and beyond it the world goes dark and cool and perfectly still. You step out of the bright afternoon and into a held breath of stone. Behind you the light thins to a coin, then to a thread, then to nothing at all, and the air against your skin turns even and mild. The temperature of deep earth, neither warm nor cold, the same it has stayed for 10,000 years. Somewhere ahead a single drop of water lets go of a ceiling you cannot see and falls through the black and strikes a pool, and the small sound of it travels out in rings of faint echo and comes back to you softened, rounded, as if the stone itself were listening. Then the silence settles again, deeper than before, and you stand inside it, your breath the only stir in air that has not moved in an age. The stone is close and cool on every side, the floor smooth and dry beneath you, and the dark lies so soft and so complete that it asks nothing of your eyes at all. You do not need to hold any of this. There is nothing here to study, nothing to keep, nothing you must carry back into the light. Let these ideas move through you, the way cool air moves through an open cave mouth, brushing past, asking nothing, leaving only the faint mineral scent of stone and water. Some of these wonders will follow you down into sleep and some will dissolve before you reach the bottom of the stair, and either way is exactly right. The mind can loosen its grip now. What stays, stays. What goes was never yours to keep. You're simply here, in the cool dark, while the earth holds you the way it has cradled so many silent rooms across so much time. And the first thing to understand about a place like this is how unhurried its making was. Most caves are not carved by hammers or rivers or any sudden force. They are dissolved. Rain falls through the sky and through the soil and takes up a faint trace of carbon dioxide along the way, and this turns it into the weakest imaginable acid, water barely sharper than the water in a glass beside your bed. Where that water meets limestone, it does something almost too slow to call an action. It loosens a few atoms of stone and carries them off, a vanishingly small amount, again and again, drip after drip, year after year. There is no violence in it, no breaking, no haste. A hollow the size of a cathedral can open in the dark over tens of thousands of years, one whisper of dissolved rock at a time. The very chamber you're standing in was made by something gentler than a stream, given nothing but acid weaker than rain, and an unimaginable patience of time. It is strange to think that the largest rooms beneath the earth were opened not by force, but by the mildest touch repeated until the mountain itself gave way. That kind of slowness leaves its name on the land above. Geologists call it karst, a whole landscape built on rock that water can dissolve, where the drainage runs downward into the dark instead of across the surface in streams. Walk over karst country, and you might never guess what lies beneath your boots. A hidden architecture of shafts and galleries and rooms, threaded together by the slow logic of falling water. Sinkholes open like dark mouths in a green field. Rivers vanish into the ground mid-flow and surface again miles away, colder, having travelled through the dark. Springs well up clear and steady where the underground water finally finds the day. The surface you walk on is only a lid, a thin crust of soil and grass laid over a far older and stranger country. And the rock that makes it, limestone, marble, dolomite, the stones that water loves, covers a great deal of the world, so that hidden rooms wait beneath a surprising share of the ground you have ever crossed. In such country, a river may run boldly across a meadow and then simply pour into a hole in its own bed and be gone, surfacing again as a cold spring a valley away, having crossed unseen beneath the hills between. Some of these springs well up a deep, clear blue from a drowned cave mouth, the water rising from a darkness no one has traced to its source. The whole landscape drinks downward rather than running off, and everything that falls on it eventually finds the dark. Down in that hidden country, the most famous shapes of all begin to form, and they too are made of slowness turned to stone. A bead of water hangs from the ceiling, heavy with dissolved mineral it carried down through the rock. Before it falls, it leaves the thinnest possible ring of stone behind, a deposit finer than a fingernail, where the water touched the air and gave up a trace of its load, The next drop adds another ring, and the next another, and over centuries these rings stack downward into a slender, hollow spike of rock that hangs from the roof of the cave. This is a stalactite, a tail of stone reaching down toward the floor, grown drop by drop from the ceiling it clings to. It is, in a sense, frozen water, or rather the memory of water, every ring a record of a single drop that hung there once, glittered, and let go into the dark. And where each of those drops lands far below on the cave floor, a second shape is rising to meet it. The water that falls still carries some of its mineral, and it lays that mineral down in a small mound where it strikes the stone, building upward as steadily as its partner builds down. This is a stalagmite, growing from the ground toward the ceiling, the mirror twin of the spike above. The two of them are made by the same falling water, one catching what the other lets go, reaching toward each other across the dark a hair's breadth at a time. And given enough centuries, the spike from above and the mound from below may close the last of the distance between them and touch, fusing into a single unbroken column of stone that runs from floor to roof, a pillar that no hand placed, raised entirely by water that long ago stopped falling. To stand beside one is to stand beside a meeting that took 10,000 years to happen. Many a great column began as the thinnest hollow tube, a single drop's width across, before its outside thickened and it grew solid and broad. Cut one open, and you can read its whole life in rings like a tree felled in the dark. Geologists call all of this dripstone, the family of shapes that water builds by giving up its mineral one drop at a time, and a single chamber may hold every stage of it at once. Straws just beginning, spikes half grown, columns long completed and already thickening toward becoming a wall. The speed of all this would test the patience of any watcher who tried to see it move. A stalactite, a stalagmite, a great column wider than your body. They grow, on average, by something near a single centimetre every 100 years. Stop and let that settle for a moment. A formation taller than a person may have begun rising when the first farmers were learning to sow grain, and it has been adding to itself, ring by ring in the dark, through every century since. Run a fingertip along its surface and you are touching a clock whose hands move in geological time. Where a whole human lifetime adds a layer thinner than a sheet of paper, there is something steadying in the thought. Nothing here is hurrying toward anything. The stone has all the time there is, and it spends it without the least impatience, building beauty for no deadline at all. Look closely at those slow shapes, and you find colour hidden inside them, laid down by the water that built them. Pure cave formations are often translucent, almost like cloudy ice, but the water seeping through the rock frequently carries traces of other minerals, and these stain the growing stone in soft bands, rust red and warm amber from iron, dark grey from manganese, honey gold where the rock is nearly clear, here and there a faint blue or green from copper in the stone. A single column may be ringed in colour like the growth rings of a tree, each band a record of the water that passed through in some long ago age, wetter or drier, richer or purer than the years on either side. The cave keeps these colours in total darkness, where no eye was ever meant to find them, painting carefully and continuously for an audience of no one at all. Beauty made simply because the conditions for beauty were there. Not every cave is born of dissolved limestone, though, and some are made not by water, but by fire. When a volcano sends a river of molten rock flowing down its slope, the surface of that glowing river meets the cooler air and hardens into a dark crust, while underneath the lava keeps running, still liquid, still moving fast in the heat. When the eruption finally ends and the last of the molten rock drains downhill and away, it leaves the hardened shell behind, a long round tunnel through solid stone called a lava tube. You can walk through some of them today, through smooth dark corridors where fire once flowed like a current, the walls still bearing the frozen ripples and drip marks of that vanished river of heat. Some run for many kilometres beneath old volcanoes, cool now and silent, the violence that made them long spent, leaving only these smooth round halls hollowed out by fire and left empty by its passing. Here and there the roof of a tube has fallen in, opening a round skylight to the sky and away down into the cool dark below, so that a desert of black rock may hide a green-floored room beneath a single hole. The longest run for tens of kilometres beneath old lava fields, branching and rejoining, their walls glaze smooth where the heat once licked them, and hung with small stone drips frozen the instant the fire withdrew. Scientists study them closely now, as models for the lava caves almost certainly waiting, empty and sheltered, beneath the surface of the Moon and Mars. Along a coastline, the sea writes its own kind of cave, gradually and with great force. Waves carry sand and broken shell and fling them against a cliff again and again, and where the rock holds a weakness, a crack, a softer seam, a vein of gentler stone, the water works it open, hour after hour, tide after tide, century upon century. The hollow deepens. A cave forms at the base of the cliff, its floor washed by every high tide, its mouth ringed with green weed, and the slow drip of salt water from the rock above. Stand inside one of these sea caves as a wave rolls in, and the whole chamber seems to breathe, the air pushed and pulled by the swell, the boom of the ocean folded and deepened and thrown back by the curving walls of stone, until a single wave fills the room with a sound far larger than itself. Where the roof of such a cave has a crack to the surface, an incoming wave can drive a spout of spray high into the air above the cliff, so that the land seems to breathe out the sea. The walls near the mouth, where bands of barnacle and weed marking the reach of the tides, slick and green and gold, and at low water the floor lies bare and dripping, strewn with the smooth stones the waves have rolled. Then the tide turns, and the chamber fills, and the booming begins again. They are caves alive with motion, lit green and gold near their mouths, never quite still, breathing with the sea that made them. And in the coldest places on earth, caves form inside the ice itself, more fleeting and more luminous than any cave of stone. A glacier is a slow river of frozen snow, kilometres long, creeping downhill over centuries, and meltwater carves passages through it from within, tunnelling channels and rooms into the very heart of the ice. Inside a glacier cave, the walls are not rock but compressed snow, pressed by its own weight over ages into ice so dense and so clear that it glows, and the light filtering down through many meters of it arrives stripped of every colour but a single deep luminous blue, the blue of the bottom of the sky, the blue of deep clear water, washing across curved walls and rippled ceilings of pure ice. These are the most temporary caves of all. The meltwater that carves them may reshape them by the next summer, or close them, or open them somewhere new, so that an ice cave is a thing that exists for a season, or a few short years, and then is gone, having held its blue light briefly in the cold and let it go. The blue is no trick of dye, but of the ice itself. Packed dense and clear, it swallows the warm red end of the light and lets only the cold blue through, deepening as the ice thickens until the walls seem lit from within by a colour with no source. Meltwater runs in clear channels across the floor, and the whole glacier groans and ticks faintly as it moves, a living sound in a room of frozen water. These caves can shift or close from one season to the next, so that no one who walks through a glacier cave is ever quite walking the same room as the year before. The thing that nearly all these rooms share, however they were made, is the dark, and it is a darkness more complete than almost anything you have ever known. Walk far enough into any cave, past the last faint reach of the entrance light, and you arrive in what cave scientists call the dark zone, where no sunlight has ever fallen and none ever will. Turn off every lamp here, and the blackness that closes around you is total, absolute, a dark with no grey anywhere in it, no faint shape resolving as your eyes adjust, because there is simply nothing for them to adjust to, not a single stray photon for the eye to gather. You can hold your hand before your face and see nothing at all. People who have sat in this dark describe the strange peace of it, how it is not frightening but enveloping once the first surprise passes. The entire visual world switched gently off, leaving only the cool air against the skin, the distant sound of water, and the steady rhythm of your own breathing in a room that has never in all its existence seen a single ray of light. It is a darkness without threat, full, soft, and complete. In that lightless place, the temperature does something strange and remarkable. It stops changing. Deep inside a cave, far from the entrance, the air settles to a nearly constant temperature the whole year round, often close to the average yearly temperature of the land far above. It does not warm in summer or cool in winter. Snow may bury the hills and heat may shimmer over them, and the seasons may wheel through every extreme they have, and down here the air holds exactly as it was, keeping its single mild temperature through every month, a pocket of the world where the calendar has simply stopped. Nothing down here must be endured. There is no cold snap to survive, no heat to wait out, no weather at all. Only the same even air, hour after hour, age after age, as though the cave had reached long ago the one temperature it wished to keep, and simply decided to keep it forever. The change happens within the first stretch inside. Near the mouth the air still swings a little with the day and the season, but go far enough in and the swing dies away entirely, settling on the year-round average of the land overhead. In a temperate country that may be a cool, even freshness. Under a warmer land it is milder. In either case, it never moves. Step from a scorching afternoon or a freezing night into that even air and the relief is immediate, the body meeting a world that has decided once and for all not to be harsh, and the dark fills slowly with sound, or rather, with the deep absence of it. Most caves are profoundly silent, the noise of the surface world sealed entirely out by solid rock, so that what little sound remains carries a strange and lovely clarity in the still air. A drop of water falling somewhere far off arrives clean and distinct, each one a small clear event in the silence. The faint trickle of an underground stream threads through the black like a single low note held without end. And in the deepest stillness, where even the water has gone silent, people sometimes report hearing the soft, steady rhythm of their own heartbeat, the only drum left in a world gone utterly calm, the sound of their own life made suddenly audible because nothing else remains to mask it. To sit in such stillness is to discover how much noise we carry without noticing, and how deep a silence the earth can keep. That heartbeat is yours now too, slow and even in the cool dark, while the cave goes on holding its long silence around you, and the water somewhere ahead lets fall another unhurried drop. In a chamber deep beneath a mountain in northern Mexico, that same unhurried water did something that seems almost invented. The cave of the crystals at Nacre holds gypsum crystals so enormous they look like the work of giants. Translucent beams of pale mineral as long as a bus and as thick as the trunk of a tree, crossing the chamber at every angle like the fallen rafters of some vast collapsed hall. They grew over hundreds of thousands of years in water heated from far below by the magma deep in the earth, mineral rich, and held to steady warmth, neither cooling nor boiling, that let the crystals add atom upon atom without pause across all that time. The conditions were exact and they held for ages, and so the crystals grew and grew, far beyond any size crystals usually reach. To stand among them, the air is so hot and so heavy with water that explorers can bear only a few minutes before they must retreat, yet the crystals themselves are utterly serene, vast and glassy and perfectly formed, the largest natural crystals ever found, grown in darkness and silence by water that simply would not stop. The chamber sits nearly 300 meters down, and the air inside it hovers near 50 degrees, wet enough that a person's lungs fill with warm mist at every breath, which is why the crystals lay unseen until miners pumping out the floodwater broke into the room by accident. Each great blade is a single crystal of selenite, clear enough in places to see a hand held behind it, faintly striped where the mineral gathered fastest. For 500,000 years, the water held at exactly the warmth that lets gypsum build without ever dissolving back, and in that narrow window the beams reached lengths no crystal anywhere else has matched, leaning across the chamber like the frozen spokes of some enormous wheel. Not all of the dark belongs to stone and water, though. Some of it is alive. In the lightless depths of caves around the world, creatures have made their home in the one place the sun never reaches, and across countless generations they have shed everything that the darkness made useless to them. Among the most haunting is the Olm, a pale salamander that lives in the flooded caves beneath southeastern Europe, its slender body the soft, translucent pink of new skin, its eyes grown over with skin and gone blind, because in a world with no light at all, there is simply nothing for eyes to do, and nature does not keep what it does not need. It breathes through feathery red gills that fan out behind its head like small frills, and it can live astonishingly for many decades. Some olms are thought to pass 100 years in the cool dark, drifting through black water that has never once felt the warmth of the sun. For centuries, people who found them thought they were the young of dragons. They are stranger and gentler than that, a creature shaped utterly by the dark and entirely at peace in it. An olm can go years between meals when food is scarce, slowing its body until it seems barely to live at all, and still emerge unharmed when prey returns. Its pale skin senses faint changes in the water and even the weak electric fields of moving creatures, so that the black flooded passage it calls home is, to the olm, a place full of signals you would never feel. It lays its eggs in still cold water and guards them for months, a ghostly pink shape standing watch in a darkness it has never once seen and never needs to. In the rivers and pools of caves elsewhere swim the cavefish, and they tell the same story in another shape entirely. A cavefish is often pale to the point of near transparency, its scales emptied of all the colour that no predator and no mate down here will ever see, and where its eyes should be there is only smooth skin, the empty sockets healed over across thousands of generations of darkness. But what it has lost in sight, it has gained in touch. Its body is laced with rows of fine, sensitive cells that read the faintest movement in the water, every ripple and current and the soft pressure of an approaching wall, so that it navigates the absolute black by feeling the world press gently against it. It has not gone without exactly. It has traded one sense for another, letting go of eyes it could never use and sharpening instead the senses the dark rewards, fitting itself so exactly to its world that light is not even a memory it has lost, only a thing its kind set down, long ago and never missed. Biologists have a single word for animals like these: troglobites, the true creatures of the cave, so deeply adapted to the dark that they can no longer survive anywhere else at all. There are blind cave beetles that run on long, delicate legs, and ghost-pale spiders that spin in the black, eyeless crayfish the colour of milk, feeling their way over the stones, tiny shrimp drifting in pools that connect to nothing on the surface. Nearly all of them share the same gifts and the same gentle losses: no working eyes, no colour in their bodies, slowed lives that need very little food, and a longevity that often far outstrips their sunlit cousins. They are the world's living proof that life will shape itself to fit absolutely anywhere, even a place with no sun, no seasons and almost nothing to eat, and that it can do so not desperately but beautifully, settling into the dark as though it had always belonged there, which by now it has. That extraordinary thrift of the body comes from the deep economy of the cave itself, a world where almost nothing is wasted because almost nothing arrives. With no sunlight, there are no plants down in the dark, nothing to turn light into food, no green leaf at the base of the living world to feed everything above it. So the entire web of life in a cave is built instead on scraps that drift in from outside. Leaves and twigs washed down by a flooding stream, the bodies of insects swept into a sinkhole, and above all the droppings of bats that roost near the entrance and fly out each night to feed in the world of light. From these meagre offerings, an entire ecosystem assembles itself in the black, fungi feeding on the debris, small pale creatures feeding on the fungi, and pale hunters feeding on them in turn. A whole living world runs on next to nothing, balanced so finely and so frugally that it has learned to need very little and to waste even less, every scrap of energy passed carefully along in the dark. The bats themselves are among the great wonders of caves, and one of their gifts is a way of seeing by sound that turns the total dark into a clear and detailed map. A bat in flight pours out a stream of high, sharp calls, far above the reach of any human ear, and listens with exquisite care for the echoes that bounce back from every surface around it, the wall, the ceiling, the open mouth of a passage, a single moth crossing the air ahead. From the tiny delays and shifts in those returning echoes, it builds a picture of the world precise enough to snatch an insect from mid-flight in absolute darkness, to thread at speed through a tangle of stone it cannot see. It is, in a real sense, hearing the shape of the room. Where you would be helpless and groping without light, the bat needs no light at all. It reads the whole architecture of the cave from the way its own voice comes home to it, painting the dark with sound and flying confidently through the picture it makes. Some caves shelter these creatures in numbers almost beyond counting. In certain great caverns, bats gather in colonies so vast they form among the largest assemblies of mammals found anywhere on the planet. Many millions of small warm bodies roosting together on a single ceiling, packed so close that the rock itself seems made of them, breathing and shifting in the dark. At dusk they pour out of the cave mouth in a rising river of wings that can take hours to fully empty, a dark spiralling column lifting into the evening sky to hunt the night air, so dense that on certain instruments it shows like a cloud or a rising storm, and at dawn they come streaming back, folding down out of the sky and into the cool dark to sleep away the day, hanging in their countless thousands in the one place the daylight never finds, while the cave holds them all in its even, unchanging air, a single vast sleeping multitude tucked into the body of the earth. A single large colony can eat many tons of insects in one night, a quiet service to the fields and forests for miles around that no one above ever sees performed. The returning bats fold their wings and drop the last stretch into the cave mouth at speed, peeling off from the dawn sky in twos and threes, and the warmth of all those gathered bodies can raise the temperature of the roost, noticeably above the rest of the cave, a pocket of held heat in the cool dark, breathing gently as they sleep. The places they sleep can reach a scale the mind struggles to hold. Beneath certain mountains lie single chambers so enormous they could swallow whole buildings without strain, rooms where the ceiling vanishes upward into a dark beyond the reach of any lamp, where a shout takes a long moment to return from the far wall, where you could lose a small village in the shadows along the edges and never find it, and all of it dissolved by water no stronger than rain, over a span of time so long that the mountains standing above were themselves younger when the work began. There is no menace in this vastness, no sense of being swallowed. There is only the deep, calming measure of how much patience the earth contains, how much room it has hollowed for itself in the dark, great cathedrals of empty space that no one built, and almost no one will ever see, kept cool and silent and complete beneath the ordinary hills. The very largest of these spaces nearly defeats the imagination. In a remote range in Southeast Asia lies a cave passage so colossal that it holds its own weather, a chamber whose roof rises high enough that clouds gather and form beneath it, where a river runs along the floor and a forest of real trees grows tall in the dim green light that falls through openings far overhead. It is among the largest known cave passages on Earth, wide and high enough that a tall building could stand inside it with room to spare, an entire piece of the outdoors folded somehow into the interior of a mountain. To walk into it is to step into a hidden landscape complete with its own jungle and its own drifting mist, sealed away inside the rock, unknown to the world until well within living memory. A lost valley with a roof, kept secret in the dark until a few explorers finally found the way in and stood astonished in its green and misted vastness. That such places stayed unknown for so long is part of their strange magic, and it points to a simple, humbling truth. The world beneath our feet is far less explored than the world we walk upon. Caves are among the last truly unmapped places left on this otherwise well-charted planet. The surface has been photographed from space down to the width of a single street, every coastline traced, every mountain measured. But the passages below remain dark to every satellite and every camera in the sky, knowable only to those who crawl and climb and wade through them in person, paying out their measuring lines metre by metre in the black. New caves are still being discovered every year, known caves still open into rooms that no one has ever entered. Whole systems almost certainly wait, sealed and complete, with no entrance yet found on the surface above them. For all our maps and all our satellites, a vast hidden country runs beneath the lit and ordered one, and the greater part of it has never felt the touch of a single beam of light, nor been crossed by a single set of human steps. Of the underground country we have managed to map, one system stands far above all the rest in sheer extent. Beneath the green hills of Kentucky lies Mammoth Cave, the longest known cave system anywhere on Earth, with more than 680 kilometres of passages surveyed and recorded, and explorers keep finding more, linking cave to cave and tunnel to tunnel, so that the known length only continues to grow with each season's work. It is a labyrinth almost beyond imagining, level upon level of corridors and chambers and crawlways threaded through the limestone, more than twice as long as the next longest cave on the planet. A maze so vast you could walk inside it for days on end and never once cross your own path. And even now, after generations of careful exploration, no one knows where its farthest passages truly end, or how much more of it still waits, unentered, in the dark beneath the fields. Parts of it were known and used long before any survey began. People of the deep past walked kilometres into it by torchlight, and much later, its passages were mined for minerals used to make gunpowder, the old wooden pipes of that work still lying where they were left in the dry air. Cave by cave, explorers have linked separate systems into the single vast one known today, and the map keeps growing, not because the cave grows, but because there is always one more crawlway leading on into the dark that no one has yet followed to its end. Where Mammoth Cave reaches outward across the dark, another cave reaches downward into it, plunging toward the deep heart of the planet. In the mountains of the Caucasus, the cave called Veryovkina descends further beneath the surface than any other yet found, more than 2 kilometers straight down into the earth, a vertical world of sheer shafts and roaring waterfalls and flooded passages that takes expert teams many days to climb down into. To reach its bottom is to stand deeper inside the body of the planet than almost any human being has ever stood by their own effort, in a chamber where the full weight of 2 kilometers of solid rock presses silently overhead. And yet at that great depth the air is calm, the temperature mild and even, the darkness soft and total, the very floor of the explored world, found at the end of a long and careful descent, a place of perfect stillness reached only by going down and down and down again into the dark. The descent is mostly rope, pitch after pitch of free-hanging line down sheer black shafts, with cold water sheeting over the rock, so that reaching the bottom and returning can take a week or more of climbing and hauling gear. Teams sleep in tents pitched on narrow ledges far underground, the only light their own, the only sound the falling water, while above them rises a kilometre of stone they must climb back through to see the sky again. At the very lowest point, a flooded passage bars the way, the floor of the known world ending in still dark water that no one has yet passed. The descent into such depths carries you slowly back through the long ages of the rock itself, layer beneath layer. The limestone a cave is carved from was once, almost unimaginably long ago, the floor of a warm, shallow sea, built up grain by grain over millions of years from the shells and skeletons of countless tiny creatures that lived and died and drifted down through ancient water to settle on the bottom. Pressed and hardened into stone, then lifted skyward by the vast unhurried movements of the Earth's crust, that old seabed became the hills we walk on, and the cave dissolved down into it is a window cut clean through deep time. The wall beside you in the dark may hold the perfect print of a shell that closed for the last time before anything at all walked on dry land. You're moving, slowly and without effort, through the pressed and hardened remains of an entire ocean that vanished an almost unthinkable span of years ago, its waters gone, its creatures stone. Sometimes the rock gives up the bones of vanished giants. Caves are among the finest natural preservers anywhere on Earth. Their cool, even temperature and their still, sheltered air keep things almost unchanged across enormous spans, so that animals which fell into them long ago, or sheltered in them and died, can be found ages afterward nearly whole. From cave floors around the world have come the remains of creatures long gone from the living world. Great bears that denned in the dark through Ice Age winters, the bones of cats with enormous curved teeth, the tusks of long-haired elephants that once walked a colder, wider Earth. The cave keeps them as nothing on the storm-scoured surface ever could, sealed away from weather and rot and the gnawing of time, holding the deep past safe and intact in its cool, dark hands, so that a creature gone for tens of thousands of years can be lifted at last, almost as it was. And the cave keeps more than bone. In a few extraordinary places, the still air and the steady cold have preserved things far more fragile and far more human. Deep within certain caverns, scientists have found the actual footprints of people who walked there thousands upon thousands of years ago, pressed into soft mud that then dried and hardened and held its shape, so clear and so perfect that you can count the toes, make out the round print of a heel, even find the place where a child once stopped and stood. No surface ground on Earth could have kept such a thing through the storms and frosts and floods of so many centuries. It would have been washed flat, blown away, erased 1,000 times over. But the sealed and motionless cave simply held the moment exactly as it was. A single set of bare steps crossing the dark, paused here and there, waiting in perfect stillness across all those ages to be found and wondered at. And on the walls of some of those same caves, the people of the deep past left far more than footprints. They left art, and it is among the very oldest and most moving art that human beings have ever made. In the dark of caves across Europe and beyond, by the unsteady flicker of stone lamps burning animal fat, people of the deep past painted the walls. They drew the great animals of their world, herds of horses with flowing manes, bison and deer caught in mid-stride, the long curved tusks of mammoths, whole herds of wild cattle running across the rock, in red and black and yellow earth, with a grace and a life in them that can still stop the breath of anyone who comes upon them now. These are not crude scratchings or the first fumbling marks of an unskilled hand. They are the work of true and gifted artists, people who understood movement and depth and the weight of a living body, who used the natural bulges and hollows of the rock to give a bison its rounded flank, or a horse its arching neck. And they are old almost beyond comprehension, made by hands that turned to dust before history began, yet still vivid on the stone. The cave of Lascaux in southern France holds some of the most famous of all these paintings. Great halls of horses and aurochs and stags rendered roughly 17,000 years ago, when the last ice age still gripped the northern world in cold. For all those thousands of years they waited there in the dark, in the constant cool and the perfect stillness that no surface wall could ever have offered. Their colours held nearly fresh and bright because the cave around them simply never changed. No sun to fade them, no rain to wash them, no frost to crack the rock. When they were rediscovered in the last century, the animals seemed almost to have been painted the day before. 17,000 years of silence and darkness, and the great herds were still running across the stone, exactly where a vanished hand had set them down, untouched by all the ages that had stormed past overhead. The cave was found by chance in the last century, the story goes, when a few boys and a dog stumbled on the hidden opening, and the first lamp carried inside lit walls crowded with hundreds of animals, some larger than life, painted in ochre and charcoal across ceilings and curving recesses, Whoever made them had ground their colours from earth and stone, blown them through tubes and dabbed them with pads of fur and moss, and worked in places that could only be reached by lamplight, far from any daylight, choosing the dark on purpose for whatever the painting meant to them. Older still are the paintings of Chauvet Cave, also in France, and they push the long story of human art back further than almost anyone once believed possible. Some of the images on its walls were made around 36,000 years ago. Lions and rhinoceroses and horses drawn with a confidence and a beauty that feels impossibly modern. The shading subtle, the movement sure, the work of people every bit as gifted as any artist alive today. For tens of thousands of years, a great rockfall sealed the cave completely, closing its mouth and holding its dark air utterly motionless, so that when it was finally entered again, the paintings were found pristine, and even the ancient footprints in the mud and the soot from long-dead torches lay exactly where they had been left. The cave had kept it all, a whole gallery of living animals and the very silence of the people who made them, perfectly preserved across an almost unfathomable reach of time. Some cave paintings reach back further than any picture of an animal, back to the simple aching mark of a single human hand. On the walls of caves across several continents, people of the deep past pressed a palm flat to the cold stone and blew powdered pigment around it from the mouth or through a hollow bone, then lifted the hand away, leaving its pale shape stenciled forever against the dark rock. Some of these handprints are tens of thousands of years old. They are the oldest kind of self-portrait there is. Not a face, but a hand. The part of us that makes and holds and reaches and shapes the world. Pressed deliberately to a cave wall by someone who wished, across all that darkness and all that unimaginable time, to say only this one simple thing. I was here, I lived, I stood in this place. And the cave, asking nothing and keeping everything, has held the saying of it faithfully ever since. Many of these walls hold dozens of hands at once, large and small together, some clearly the hands of children pressed beside the hands of adults, scattered across the rock like a gathering held thousands of years ago and never quite ended. A few show fingers that appear shortened or folded, and no one is certain why. Beside the hands, in some caves, run rows of careful red dots and lines whose meaning is wholly lost. The first marks of a language we will never read, left glowing on the stone by people who understood them perfectly and are gone. Long after those vanished hands, caves went on sheltering the living, as they always had. For very nearly the whole of the human story, long before there were houses or walls or roofs that people built, caves were home, and a remarkably good one. They offered what the open world never could, a roof of solid rock that no storm could ever tear away, walls that held the warmth of a fire through the bitterest night, a single mild and steady temperature deep inside while blizzards raged or droughts cracked the land outside, and a dark, narrow, defensible mouth that could be guarded against the cold and the dangers of the night. Families lived their whole lives in such places, raised their children by the firelight on the cave floor, slept safe and warm in the unchanging air. The cave was the first shelter, the first room, the first hearth, the first place, perhaps, that the simple word home could ever have been said to mean. That gift of refuge never entirely ended, even as the ages turned. All through later history, whenever the world above grew dangerous, people went down into caves to be safe. Whole communities carved homes and chapels and storerooms into the soft cave rock, hiding from raiders deep in chambers cut far beneath the hills. Travellers sheltered from sudden storms in them. Hermits and seekers withdrew into their deep stillness to think and pray away from the noise of the world. In hard and frightening times, the hunted and the desperate slipped silently underground and waited there for the danger above to pass them by. Across thousands of years and on every inhabited continent, the answer to a world grown suddenly harsh has so often been the same simple thing: to step into the cool dark of the earth and to let it close protectively around you, exactly as it is closing, soft and complete, around you now. The water that does all this work rarely travels alone, Underground, it gathers and runs together into rivers that live their whole lives without ever once seeing the sky. A cave river is born of rain that sank into the ground and was channeled downward through cracks and joints until it pooled and began to flow in the dark, and from there it carves its own passage onward through the rock, behaving exactly like a river of the surface but hidden, cold and silent. Some of these rivers run for many kilometers entirely underground before they finally surface again into the light. They have proper currents and deep pools and small waterfalls, sandbanks and slow still reaches, a whole river's life lived out from source to mouth in perfect blackness. And the pale fish and blind creatures that live within them have never once felt the sun warm the water that carries them along through the dark, born in it, living in it, dying in it, an entire river world that the day has never touched. After heavy rain on the surface, such a river can rise with frightening speed, filling passages to the roof within hours and then falling again to a thread, scouring the rock and rearranging the sand each time. Between floods it runs clear and cold over pale gravel, and where it pools the blind creatures gather, reading the current for the faint trace of food washed in from the lit world far above. A whole river runs its course here from first trickle to final spring, and never once catches the glint of a single ray of sun. Where such a river slows and spreads and pools, it can form an underground lake of an almost unearthly stillness. With no wind anywhere to ruffle its surface and no light to warm it from above, the face of a cave lake can lie so flat and so perfectly motionless that it becomes a black mirror, doubling every formation hanging above it until you genuinely cannot tell where the stone ends and its reflection begins, where the real column stops and the imagined one starts. The water is often crystalline, filtered through hundreds of meters of rock until it runs purer than almost any water found on the surface, and so clear that a lamp's beam plunges straight down through many meters of it to light the pale floor far below. To stand at the edge of such a lake is to look at stillness itself given a surface, a calm so deep and so complete that it seems less like a body of water than like a single long-held breath, waiting in the dark. In the warm, clear seas of certain regions, the cave and the lake become a single, extraordinary thing. A cenote is a flooded sinkhole, a place where the roof of a water-filled cave collapsed long ago and opened a round window down into a hidden underground river. The water held in a cenote is often almost unbelievably clear, and a deep, jeweled blue, and divers who descend into them pass from the bright open surface pool down into vast flooded caverns hung with stalactites that formed in open air long ago, in some far drier age when these caves were dry and the seas of the world lay lower. To float there, neutral and weightless in the cool clear water, is to hang suspended inside a drowned cathedral of stone, surrounded by formations that grew in a vanished dry world and now stand silent beneath the water, in a deep blue silence that the sea itself has sealed away from time. It is one of the strangest and most beautiful places a person can go on the whole face of the earth. Whole regions are riddled with them, thousands of round blue wells opening into a single drowned network that runs for hundreds of kilometers beneath the forest, the longest underwater cave passages known. In the deep past, people held them sacred, drawing drinking water from them and leaving offerings in their depths, and the still water has preserved much of what fell or was placed there. Small fish hang in the bright surface pool where the sunlight reaches, and beyond them the passages run off into blackness, the clear water so still that a diver's bubbles seem the only moving thing in the world. Where fresh water and salt water meet underground, the flooded cave plays a final visual trick that almost defies belief. In some of these drowned caves, lighter fresh water floats in a clear layer above the heavier salt water beneath it, and the boundary between them is so sharp and so distinct that it shimmers, a watery haze called a halocline, where the two waters meet and refuse to mix. Swim down through it and the whole world blurs for a moment, smearing and wavering as though seen through warped glass, then sharpens again the instant you cross fully from the fresh water into the salt below. It is exactly as though you had passed through an invisible pane of glass hung in the dark, a window between two worlds of water, and then it closes behind you, and the fresh water above and the dense sea below settle back into their separate piece, layered and still, holding apart in the flooded silence as they have held apart for a very long time. Not all cave water lies still, of course. Some of it falls, and the underground waterfalls are among the most hidden marvels of the whole deep earth. Where a cave river reaches a sudden drop in the rock, it pours over the edge and down into the blackness below, and the sound of it swells and fills the entire chamber, magnified and rounded and thrown back by the close stone until even a modest fall roars like something far greater and grander than it is. Fine spray drifts cool and invisible against your face out of the dark. The water gathers in a pool you cannot see at the bottom and runs on, deeper still into the earth, falling perhaps through level after level of the cave down passages no one has ever followed to their end. A waterfall in open sunlight is a spectacle to be admired. A waterfall in total darkness is something closer to a presence in the room, heard and felt and known long before it could ever be seen, a roar of unseen water somewhere ahead in the patient black. The minerals carried in all this moving water build far more than stalactites alone. Given the right still conditions, they build whole landscapes in miniature. Where mineral-rich water flows in a thin sheet across a gently sloping cave floor, it lays its stone down in graceful curving terraces, shallow rounded pools edged with delicate raised rims of rock, stepping down one into the next like rice paddies cut into a green hillside, each holding its own small flat mirror of water. These rimstone pools can fill an entire chamber with a descending staircase of small calm waters, every curved rim built up grain by grain over ages, the whole shimmering arrangement shaped by nothing more than the way water naturally chooses to flow and where it chooses to settle. It is a garden of stone and standing water, grown entirely in the dark, terraced and arranged by gravity and time alone, with no gardener and no plan but the simple physics of water finding its level in the black. Sometimes the growing stone seems to forget which way is down, and the result is one of the strangest sights anywhere underground. There are formations called helictites, thin twisting threads of mineral that grow sideways and upward and curl back upon themselves, openly defying gravity, spiralling out from walls and ceilings in shapes that look frankly impossible, as if the rock had been caught mid-gesture. They form when water moves through the stone so very slowly that it seeps rather than drips, drawn along by forces finer and subtler than the simple downward pull of a falling drop, so that the crystal builds in whatever direction the creeping water happens to take it. The result is a tangle of pale stone tendrils, frozen mid-curl all through the dark, like the cave breathing out a strange and impossibly intricate frost, a frost that took 10,000 years to bloom into the air, and that will hang there, unmoving, for 10,000 more. Run a beam of light along certain cave walls and the very stone seems to hang in folds, like heavy fabric caught and held in a draught. These are flowstone draperies, sheets of mineral deposited where water once ran in a thin film down a slanting wall or sloping ceiling, building up over ages into delicate rippling curtains of solid stone. Many of them are translucent, thin enough that a lamp held behind one glows softly through it and reveals bands of buried colour running through its folds, amber and cream and rust laid down by the changing waters of long ago. Where those bands run in narrow alternating stripes, cavers have long called them cave bacon, and the homely name fits perfectly. The stone looks soft and supple enough to sway in a breeze, though it is solid rock through and through, and it has hung there in its frozen ripple, perfectly motionless, far longer than any real cloth could ever have lasted in the world above. The strangest formations of all may well be the ones shaped like flowers. In certain dry caves there grow gypsum flowers, curling, petalled blooms of pale crystal that push out from the walls as the mineral crystallizes, the growth happening always at the base so that the delicate fronds curve and splay outward, opening like a blossom toward a sun they will never ever see. They look impossibly fragile, like frost ferns spread on a winter window, or the unfurling of some pale white creature of the deep sea, and they are made of nothing but mineral and the slow seep of moisture creeping through stone. A single cave can hold a whole bed of these stone flowers, blooming in perfect darkness on a timescale far too gradual for any eye to watch, wanting neither light nor warmth, beautiful entirely and only for its own sake, in a place that no one was ever meant to see. So the cave grows its frozen gardens on and on in the dark, while the cool air holds steady and your breathing slows to match the long, even rhythm of the stone. In a small handful of caves, the darkness is not quite total, for it holds a faint living light of its own. In certain caverns there live tiny creatures whose larvae glow, hanging from the ceiling on fine threads of silk, each one a single pinprick of soft blue-green light suspended in the black. Look up in such a cave and the roof above seems sown with stars. Hundreds of them, thousands of them, a still and silent constellation hung in the absolute dark, and where a still underground lake lies below, the lights are doubled in the black mirror of the water until you seem to float at the very centre of a sphere of gentle radiance. The glow is the small creature's lure, a cold living lamp it makes through delicate chemistry within its own body, used to draw the tiny prey of the cave toward it. And in making it, the creature transforms the lightless ceiling into the nearest thing on all the earth to a clear night sky brought indoors, that a living thing can make its own light at all points toward a far deeper marvel. The cave is a whole world that has learned, in places, to do entirely without the sun. Everything you have ever watched grow in the daylit world, the grass, the trees, the grain in the field, the food on every table you have ever sat at, runs ultimately on sunlight, on the green machinery of leaves turning light into living matter. But deep underground, in caves fully cut off from the surface, scientists have found living worlds that run on something else completely, on chemistry drawn straight from the rock itself. Certain microbes there draw their energy not from any light but from the minerals and gases seeping out of the stone, and upon those microbes entire hidden ecosystems are built, fully alive in places where sunlight has never reached and never possibly could. Life, it turns out, does not strictly need the sun at all. It needs only energy, and the dark, deep earth has energy of its own to give. Where those rock-feeding microbes gather thickly, they sometimes drape the very walls of the cave in living veils. On the walls of certain deep caves hang what explorers have named snotites, soft, dripping colonies of microbes that cling to the stone like slender stalactites made of living matter, secreting fluid as they feed on the minerals around them in the dark. They are strange to look at and stranger still to truly consider. Entire communities of life, generations deep, hanging there in the black with no sunlight, no plants, no trace of the green living world you know, sustaining themselves wholly on the slow chemistry of the rock. They're among the most genuinely alien-seeming life forms on our own familiar planet, and yet they thrive, untroubled, in a calm and lightless peace, neither hurried nor harmed by the absence of the sun, perfectly at home in a place that would seem to offer life nothing at all. In a few caves, the microbes feed on rising volcanic gases and drip a fluid as sharp as battery acid from the ceiling, etching the very rock that shelters them, building the cave out from the inside even as they live in it. These rooms are sealed worlds, untouched by any surface food, their entire economy running on the chemistry of the deep earth. To find life flourishing there, in air that would sting the eyes and on rock that dissolves at a touch, is to learn that the conditions life can bear are far wider and stranger than the green and sunlit world had ever suggested. Caves like that have taught scientists to lift their eyes toward other worlds in an entirely new way. The microbes that live on pure rock chemistry in total darkness have become a kind of clue, a living hint of how life might somehow survive in places we once thought utterly hopeless for it. Beneath the frozen crust of distant moons, deep inside the rock of other planets, anywhere at all that there is a little mineral energy and a trace of water, but no light whatsoever. To study a deep cave here on Earth is, in a small but real sense, to rehearse the search for life among the stars, to learn what life can endure when stripped of the sun. The dark room you're resting in tonight is a doorway not only down into our own planet's hidden depths, but outward into one of the largest questions there is, and it answers that question simply and hopefully that life can take hold and keep its grip almost anywhere. That is part of why some caves are now guarded as carefully as any treasure. The most fragile and most beautiful cave formations are so delicate, and they grow so impossibly gradually that a single careless touch can ruin in an instant what took 100,000 years of dripping water to build. The natural oil from a single fingertip can halt a formation's growth forever where it lands, sealing the surface so the water can no longer add to it. A snapped crystal will not mend or regrow in any span of time that holds the slightest meaning for us. And so the most precious caves are protected fiercely now, entered only by a careful few, lit briefly and gently and never for long, so that the slow stone gardens within them can go on growing in their dark exactly as they always have. There is a real tenderness in that, a whole restless species learning, little by little, to walk softly through rooms far older than its own brief existence. Even the breath of visitors must sometimes be measured, for caves are far more sensitive than they appear. In the painted caves like Lascaux, the warm, moist breath of too many people and the simple heat of their gathered bodies can quietly shift the delicate balance of air and moisture that kept the paintings perfect for 17,000 years, feeding moulds along the walls, dewing the painted surfaces, threatening the very images that the cool, unchanging dark had preserved so flawlessly across all that time. And so some of the greatest painted caves on Earth are now sealed away from nearly everyone, their treasures seen only in exact and careful copies built nearby for visitors. The fragile originals rest again in the dark and the silence and the steady, unchanging air that first made them and saved them, kept safe now by being left entirely alone, held once more in the deep stillness they were always meant to keep. The air of a cave, it turns out, is a small world all its own, and in a few rare caves it is not even safe to breathe. The deepest passages can sometimes gather pockets of heavy gas that pool silently in the lowest places, invisible and without odour, where the perfectly still air never stirs enough to clear them away. Experienced cavers carry sensitive instruments to read the air ahead of them, alert to the rare and total stillness that, in a few unusual places, can hold a danger that cannot be seen or smelled at all. It is a sharp reminder of just how separate this underground world truly is from our own. A place with its own atmosphere, its own strange chemistry, its own rules that must be approached with care and respect. And yet in the great majority of caves the air is simply clean and cool and mild and even, as fresh as the inside of a stone, holding no threat at all. Exactly as it is, soft and breathable, in the cave around you now. That cool, even air gives caves another gift, one that people have quietly relied on for thousands of years. They keep things cold. Long before there were any machines to chill or freeze a thing, people stored their food in caves and used the constant low temperature as a natural larder, lowering cheeses and cured meats and casks of wine down into the steady underground cool to keep them through the long, warm months when the surface world would have spoiled them. In some regions, certain famous cheeses are still ripened in caves to this very day, laid carefully in the mineral-scented dark to develop deep flavours found nowhere else on Earth, veined through with particular moulds that live only in that particular cave. The cave asks for nothing in return and gives the gift of pure stillness and pure steadiness, a single, faithful temperature, held without any effort at all year upon year upon year. In certain limestone hills, fine cracks in the rock let a steady stream of cool, damp air pass through the storage caves, and it is this moving air, holding always to the same few degrees, that ripens some of the most famous blue-veined cheeses in the world, their flavour owed to a mould that grows nowhere but in that particular dark. Sparkling wines have long been aged the same way, racked in deep cave galleries where the even cold lets them mature without haste. The cave keeps no clock and runs no machine. It simply holds its one temperature and lets the work be done. For very much the same reason, caves became the cradles of some of the oldest sound that human beings ever shaped into music. In the great painted caves of the deep past, researchers studying them have noticed something genuinely remarkable. The very chambers richest in paintings are often precisely the ones where sound behaves most strangely and most beautifully, where a single human voice swells and rings and seems to fill the whole of the rock around it. It may well be no accident at all. The people who painted in those places may have chosen them partly for the way they sounded, singing perhaps, or chanting together by firelight in chambers that gathered one voice and gave it back as many, deep and resonant in the dark. The cave was not only the first home and the first gallery of art. It may also have been among the very first concert halls, taking the bare human voice and shaping it into something larger and stranger than itself. In some painted caves, the densest clusters of images fall exactly where a low-sung note sets the whole chamber humming, the rock answering the voice as though it had been chosen for the reply. Whether the painters meant it or not, the link is striking enough that researchers now map sound and image together. Among the oldest instruments ever found are flutes of bird bone and ivory, carved tens of thousands of years ago and left in caves, so that the same dark that holds the painted herds may once have held the first music humans ever played beneath the earth. Some caves still sing even now if you only let them. There are places deep underground where the stone formations themselves can ring like instruments, slender columns and thin hanging draperies of rock that, tapped softly, give out clear and lingering musical tones, each one a different note depending on its thickness and its length, just like the pipes of an organ or the keys of a marimba. In a few caves, people have found formations so naturally tuned that a whole soft music can be drawn from the living stone, the rock chiming and singing like the keys of some vast instrument grown slowly over ages by nothing but dripping water. To hear it is to understand that the cave is not truly silent by nature, but only waiting, full of potential sound, held latent in the cold stone, ready to ring softly out into the dark at the very lightest touch of a hand. For all their seeming stillness, caves keep a faithful memory of the climate, written drop by single drop into the growing stone. Because a stalagmite grows so gradually and so steadily, each thin layer it lays down carries a faint chemical record of the very water that fell to make it that year, and through that water, a record of the whole world far above. By carefully reading those layers, much like reading the rings of an ancient felled tree, scientists can trace the rains and the droughts, the warmths and the deep chills of tens of thousands of years, season laid carefully upon season in a single slender column of stone. A cave formation is a diary the earth kept without ever meaning to keep one, a long and faithful and unbroken record of every single year it stood there growing in the dark, remembering the weather of the surface long after everyone who ever felt that weather on their skin was gone. The deep ice caves keep a different kind of memory entirely, one frozen rather than written. Caves that hold permanent ice that never once melts away year after year, sheltered from every summer by the constant cool dark of the surrounding rock, can preserve layers of frozen water and trapped pockets of air that are centuries or even many thousands of years old. Locked within that ancient ice are tiny bubbles of the very air that filled the world when the water froze, sealed in the instant of freezing and held perfectly ever since. To melt such ice is, in a strange and literal way, to release a single breath of an older sky into the present air. The cave becomes a vault not only of stone and bone, but of time and atmosphere itself, holding the cold and the very breath of the deep past motionless in its dark, demanding nothing of any of it, losing nothing, keeping everything still and whole. Sometimes whole ages of weather show plainly in a single wall of stone. Where layer after layer of flowstone is built up over the long life of a cave, the stone can be carefully sliced and read like the pages of a thick book, each separate band a record of a wetter time or a drier one, the colours and the thicknesses shifting as the climate itself shifted far overhead through the centuries. A single cross-section of such a wall can span more time than the whole of recorded human history, every fine line of it laid down silently by water dripping in the dark. To run your eyes along it is to read a story that has no words at all, a long story written by rain and mineral across an almost unimaginable stretch of years, and kept perfectly legible by nothing but the deep unchanging stillness of the cave that held it. The colours within those records can be vivid and surprising, for the minerals that stain cave stone make up an artist's whole palette. Those same earth pigments band the climate record itself, each layer tinted a little differently by whatever the water carried in the age that laid it down. In some caves, the formations even glow under certain kinds of light, with colours quite invisible by day, the very stone fluorescing in unearthly blues and greens where particular minerals lie woven through it. And all of it grows in total darkness, coloured for no eye and no admirer, the cave painting itself across the long ages in pigments drawn only from the rock, the water, and the deep silent chemistry of the earth. An art made entirely in the dark, for the dark, by the dark. Where water splashes and spatters rather than drips cleanly, it builds knobbly little clusters that cavers call cave popcorn, roughening whole walls with pale beaded stone. Elsewhere, a film of water creeping over a ledge leaves a smooth, glassy sheet you could see your lamp reflected in. The same mineral, laid down 100 different ways by 100 different flows of water, gives a single cave more textures than a hand could name in an afternoon, every one of them grown without a sound. The shapes those minerals build have earned a whole gentle vocabulary all their own. Cavers, finding the same forms again and again in caves scattered across the entire world, gave them homely, affectionate names. The thinnest hanging spikes are called soda straws when they are hollow and slender as a reed. The rippling sheets are draperies. The small rounded knobs that cluster on the walls are cave popcorn. The towering pillars, the flowing curtains, the rimmed terraced pools, the impossible twisting threads, each kind has its own homely name. It is a tender thing, this naming, when you stop to think of it. A whole hidden museum of forms that human beings crawled and climbed into the deep dark to find, and then loved enough to give names to so that the silent shapes the slow water made would never go entirely unspoken and unremembered in the bright world above. The very thinnest of all those forms is among the most delicate things in the whole of nature. A soda straw is a hollow tube of stone barely wider than the single drop of water that builds it, hanging straight down from the ceiling, growing longer as each new drop runs down through its hollow centre and adds one more thin ring to its tip. Some grow remarkably long and yet remain no thicker than a pencil, a fragile pipe of pure pale mineral that the slightest breath might seem to threaten, and yet that has hung there perfectly intact in the still cave air for thousands of years. There is a real astonishment in a thing so slender lasting so very long, kept whole and unbroken only because nothing here ever truly moves, in air that has not once stirred hard enough to snap it across all the long centuries it has hung there, growing in the dark. Even the floors of caves can hold a strange small beauty, in the form of pearls. In shallow cave pools where water drips down steadily and stirs the sediment on the bottom, a single grain of sand can become the seed of a cave pearl, a small smooth sphere of mineral that grows in fine layers around its tiny core, turned gently and constantly by the falling water so that it builds up evenly on every side at once, in exactly the way an oyster builds a true pearl around a grain of grit. Whole nests of them can gather in a single pool, pale and round and softly polished, rolling over and over through the long years in the very same dripping water that first made them. They are pearls grown entirely without an oyster, shaped by nothing at all but a dripping ceiling far above and the slow turning of stone in the cool dark of the water. The deeper you go, the more the cave reveals how richly alive with hidden process its every wall has always been. Some passages are lined entirely with crystals, sheathing every surface like a thick frost. a chamber whose walls and ceiling and floor are completely covered in glittering mineral, grown from water that once filled the entire room and then, over ages, gave up its dissolved load of stone onto every face it touched. To step into such a place is to step bodily inside a geode, one of those plain rough rocks that, cracked open, reveals a secret hollow heart lined with sparkling crystal. Here the geode is the size of a whole room, and you stand within it, surrounded on every single side by the slow glitter of stone that grew in perfect darkness and perfect calm, gleaming faintly back at the only light that has perhaps ever entered it. Caves can even hold a kind of weather all their own, a constant and almost imperceptible breathing of air. Many caves breathe in and out over the hours and days, their air drifting inward or back outward, as the air pressure of the world far above gently rises and falls, so that standing alone in a passage you may feel against your face the very faintest steady movement of air, the cave breathing in time with the changing weather of the distant surface. Some caves were first discovered by exactly this and nothing more. A current of cool air sighing out of a small hole in the ground, the breath of a great hidden world below softly betraying its presence to someone who happened to stand still enough and silent enough to feel it move. It is the earth itself, in a sense, drawing slow, even breaths in the dark far beneath the hurry of the day. The patterns that flowing water leaves on the bare rock can be beautiful even where no crystal ever grows. Where an underground stream has run for ages over a cave floor, it carves the solid stone into smooth scalloped hollows, gentle scoops and shallow waves pressed deep into the rock by the endless turning of the water, each separate curve a record of exactly how the current once moved across it. Run a hand over them in the dark and the stone is silky and sculpted, as soft to the touch as something carefully polished by hand, though it is hard rock shaped by nothing but flowing water. The water that made them may have gone entirely, or wandered off to carve some other passage elsewhere, but its memory stays pressed into the stone in long, smooth, overlapping ripples, a frozen current you can read and follow with your fingertips alone there in the lightless dark. Where the rock above happens to give way, a cave will sometimes open a single bright eye to the sky. A collapse in a cavern's roof can leave a skylight far overhead, a round opening through which a single shaft of pure daylight falls all the way down into the dark. And in that one lone beam, in the right hour of the right day, dust drifts and turns and glows, and the light seems almost to pour down like something poured from a great height, striking the distant cave floor in a single bright pool ringed all around by deep shadow. Green plants will often cluster thickly in that one lit patch, improbable and vivid in the depths, living on the single column of light. It is the meeting place of two whole worlds, the bright surface reaching one slender finger of daylight down into the underground night, and it is among the most simply beautiful sights the whole earth has to offer anyone who stands and watches it. Through such openings, and through the wide mouths of caves, a curious twilight world takes hold just inside the threshold of the dark. This is the twilight zone, the band of any cave where the daylight still reaches in but grows steadily dimmer with each step inward, thinning and fading toward the true blackness beyond. Here grows a strange green fur of moss and ferns and pale leaning seedlings that thrive on almost nothing at all of them turned hungrily toward the distant light, living right at the very edge of where green life can still find enough of the sun. Step in just a little farther than they can follow, and they thin and falter and vanish, surrendering the cool rock to the creatures of the true and total dark beyond. It is a borderland, this zone, a slow and graded dissolving of bright day into deep night, held quietly inside the body of the stone, the place where the very last of the daylight finally lies down and gives way. The plants here grow strange in the failing light. Ferns flatten their fronds into single broad planes turned toward the entrance. Mosses spread thin as paint across the damp stone, and pale seedlings sprout from seeds washed in, living a few weeks on almost nothing before the dark defeats them. Spiders string their webs across the dimness to catch what flies in from outside, and crickets graze the edge between the worlds. It is a shoreline of a kind, the tide of daylight running out across the rock, and a whole narrow band of life clinging to the last shallow reach of it. Beyond that soft border, the creatures of the dark have learned to find their way through the world without ever once seeing it, and their many methods are a wonder all on their own. The bats read the black by echo, the pale fish read it by the gentle pressure of the water flowing over their skin, and the cave crickets feel their careful way forward with antennae far longer than their own small bodies, sweeping the dark ahead of them like searching living threads. Not one of them needs the smallest scrap of light. Each has fitted itself instead with another whole way of knowing the world, by sound, by touch, by the faintest stir of moving air, so that the cave which would leave you utterly blind and groping in an instant is to them a place fully and richly known, read fluently and confidently in senses that you yourself do not even possess. The darkness is not emptiness to any of them. It is simply and completely home. Some of those creatures keep an astonishing faithfulness to the particular cave that raised them. Certain cave swiftlets, small birds that nest deep within the dark of great caverns, navigate the lightless passages entirely by their own echoes, clicking softly to themselves as they fly and reading the sound that returns from the unseen walls, so that they can find their one single nest on a vast black wall among many thousands of others exactly like it. They roost where no daylight has ever reached, raise their young there in the dark, and pour out in their numbers at dusk to hunt the open evening sky, and then thread their way home again, every one of them, through winding passages no eye could ever navigate, guided home through the blackness by nothing but sound. They are creatures of two worlds at once, the bright open air and the deep black cave, and they cross faithfully between the two of them every single day of their lives. The nests those small birds build have a quiet fame all their own. The cave swiftlets make their nests almost entirely out of their own hardened saliva, fashioning small translucent cups that they fix high on the sheer cave walls. And in some cultures, these particular nests have been carefully gathered for many centuries to make a rare and delicate soup, prized above almost any other food on earth. The gatherers climb tall and fragile scaffolds of lashed bamboo high up into the dark of enormous caverns to reach them, working by the light of a single lamp far above the distant floor, in a dangerous tradition passed carefully down through many long generations of the same families. It is one of the oldest and the strangest harvests anywhere in the world. A food made of the work of birdsong's own makers, gathered slowly from the high ceilings of caves, deep in the cool dark where the swiftlets wheel and click and call. Deeper still, away from every nest and every beating wing, the cave holds inner chambers that no living thing inhabits at all. And there the stillness reaches its very purest and most complete form. In a sealed inner room, far from the entrance and from the reach of any creature, nothing whatsoever moves, no breath of air stirs, no drop of water falls, no light has ever once come, nor ever will. The formations stand precisely as they have stood for an uncountable span of years, and they will go on standing exactly so, untouched, for an uncountable span more. It is as close to perfect and absolute stillness as the entire living world contains anywhere. A place where time itself seems to set down its heavy burden at last and simply rest, where nothing is asked and nothing is demanded and nothing changes, and the deep dark keeps its long, dreamless, undisturbed peace across the ages. And yet even that deeper stillness is not entirely empty, for the very rock itself is faintly, endlessly busy. Atom by single atom, the water still seeps through it. Molecule by molecule, the stone still grows or dissolves, on a timescale so unimaginably vast that 1,000 human years would show within it as very nearly nothing at all. The cave is never truly finished, never quite complete. It is always, imperceptibly becoming something. A stalactite a hair's breadth longer than it was, a pool a single shade deeper, a crystal one atom wider than when you first arrived. Stillness here is not the absence of all change, but the very slowest possible change there is, so gentle and so gradual that it reads to creatures as quick as us as a perfect and absolute rest. The cave is alive in geological time, dreaming its long, deep dream of stone and asking absolutely nothing of the hurrying hours that pass so quickly far above it. That deep slowness can quietly reset a human sense of time entirely. People who have spent long stretches living deep inside caves, fully cut off from every sunrise and every sunset, have found their inner clocks drifting loose and free from the ordinary rhythm of the day, sleeping and waking on long rhythms of their own choosing, the hours and even the days blurring together in the changeless and timeless dark. With no dawn to mark the start of any morning, the mind gradually softens its tight grip on time, and the relentless schedule of the busy surface world simply dissolves away to nothing. There is a strange and genuine freedom in it, the deep freedom of a place where the clock has no purchase and no power, where one quiet moment is much like the next and nothing at all presses or hurries you onward, very nearly the same soft freedom in fact of the restful state you're drifting so gently toward right now. The colours of the deep cave, on those rare occasions when light does finally reach them, can be unexpectedly soft and warm to the resting eye. The pure clean white of fresh mineral, the cream and the honey of translucent stone, the warm amber and gold of iron-stained flowing rock, the deep wet brown of damp limestone. These are the true tones of the underground world, earthy and warm and remarkably easy on the eye, lit briefly and gently by a passing lamp before the dark folds softly back over them again. There is nothing harsh anywhere in the whole palette of a cave, no glare, no sharpness, no cold. It is the colouring of a warm shadow and old stone and clear still water, the entire world rendered in the gentlest possible earth tones, made as if on purpose for resting eyes, made for the slow, unhurried, undemanding looking of someone who is in no kind of hurry at all. And the warm stone holds its quiet, earthy colours in the dark, lit by nothing now, waiting, while your own eyes rest easily closed and the cool air moves softly past. The shapes of caves themselves vary as widely as the many forces that make them, and each separate kind carries its own quiet character. Some caves are single great rounded chambers, vast and high and domed. Others are endless tangled mazes of criss-crossing passages with no clear plan. Some plunge straight down in sheer vertical shafts, while others wind almost perfectly level for many kilometres at a stretch. There are caves shaped like long winding rivers, and caves shaped like sponges, riddled through and through with holes, caves with grand cathedral halls and caves so tight a single person can barely squeeze through them at all. Each one is the unique signature of how it formed, the particular path the water happened to take, the particular kind of rock it found there, the long, slow, particular history of that one place and no other. No two caves anywhere are truly alike, each a single, unrepeatable sentence written slowly by water into stone, in a flowing language of hollows and dark. In some lands, the nature of the rock itself dictates a strange and dramatic kind of cave, where the underlying bedrock happens to be gypsum or even solid salt rather than the usual limestone. The water dissolves it faster and far more strangely, carving caves whose walls can glitter openly with the very mineral they are made of, or whose passages twist into wild forms that no slow limestone cave would ever take. There are caves cut entirely through solid salt, where the walls themselves are made of it, where only the rare and perfectly dry air of the desert above keeps them from slowly melting away into nothing, and where a single lamp held close to the wall reveals the clear crystalline gleam of pure solid salt running all around you in the dark. They are among the very rarest caves of all on earth, dissolved out of a stone that most water would simply wash entirely away, surviving only there in the driest and the stillest and the most sheltered dark. Even fast-flowing water, given a strange enough setting, can build caves up above the ground instead of dissolving them below it. At certain waterfalls and mineral springs, Water so heavy with dissolved lime deposits its load of stone so quickly that it builds outward into the open air, forming caves and arches and hanging curtains of fresh new rock all around the falling water, travertine, the same warm, porous stone that lines so many hot springs and terraced pools. Behind certain waterfalls, a hollow opens where the depositing stone has slowly arched right over an empty space, so that a person can stand inside a small cave of brand new rock and look out through the falling sheet of water at the bright world beyond. It is the exact and perfect opposite of the slow, dissolving far below in the deep, for here the cave is built up, out in the open air and the daylight, by water in a great hurry to lay its stone down. The mouths of caves have always drawn the human eye, and they hold a gentle drama all their own. A cave entrance is a true threshold between two whole worlds, the lit and the dark, the warm and the cool, the long known and the deeply hidden, and standing within one you feel both of those worlds at once, all around you, the breeze and the birdsong and the green of the surface at your back, the still cool mineral breath of the underground reaching out toward you from ahead. Trailing vines and hanging ferns often curtain the opening, dripping steadily with the moisture the cave below exhales into the warmer air. The rock is worn smooth and round by the running water and the weather of long ages. To stand at a cave mouth is to stand within a kind of natural doorway set into the earth itself, with a whole vast hidden world waiting just beyond the last reach of the daylight. Some of those doorways open in the most unexpected places imaginable. There are caves that open in the very middle of burning deserts, their cool damp depths a genuine shock to the body beneath all that sun-blasted sand. Caves that open underwater, their dark entrances hidden entirely beneath the moving waves. Caves set high on remote mountainsides, their mouths level with the drifting clouds. Caves threaded unknown directly beneath busy cities, running unmapped under the streets and buildings of the daylight world. Wherever the right kind of rock and the long, slow work of water happen to come together, a hidden room may quietly wait below, so that even the most ordinary and unremarkable ground you have ever stood upon may, for all you know, be the simple lid of a quiet wonder, a cool, dark chamber sleeping unseen and unsuspected beneath the busy surface of things. The sheer age of the rooms below puts a single human life into the very gentlest of all perspectives. A cave may have begun forming millions upon millions of years ago, opening and growing and slowly decorating itself across spans of time so vast and so long that the entire history of humankind, from the first painted hand to this very night, is no more than a single recent breath drawn somewhere near the end of it. The stalagmite standing quietly beside you may have begun its slow rising before your kind even existed upon the earth, and it will very likely go on rising, ring by ring, long after. There is no fear at all to be found in this, only a deep and settling and almost tender calm. The calm of being a brief warm guest in a very old and very settled house, held for one single quiet night, in rooms that have known the slow passage of more time than the mind can ever truly hold, and that want nothing whatsoever of you in return but your rest. And the cave keeps its measureless ancient time all around you, unhurried and untroubled, while a single short night of yours passes lightly and easily away in the dark. The way that light behaves inside a cave, on the rare occasions it ever enters, can be quite unlike anything you have ever seen up in the daylit world. A single lamp held in a great dark chamber does not so much light the whole room as carve a small warm world out of the surrounding dark, its glow falling on the nearest stone and then fading away to black a little distance off, so that the cave shows itself only in the patch of light you happen to carry with you, closing softly again into darkness behind you as you move. Shadows swing and stretch enormously as the light shifts. A formation leaps suddenly out of the blackness into gold and then sinks back into it as you pass on by. It is an intimate and a gentle way of seeing the world, this. The world arriving only as far out as the light can reach and no further, all the rest of it held quietly in a soft and patient dark. not unlike, perhaps, the drifting edge of sleep itself, where only the very nearest thought stays lit. In the water-filled caves, that same light does stranger and lovelier things still. A diver's lamp in a flooded cavern sends its beam out through water, so perfectly clear that the light itself seems almost to hang suspended within it, picking out the pale, silent formations and the drifting motes, throwing soft, moving caustics of pale brightness across the stone as the unseen surface high above gently ripples and stirs. The clear water magnifies and bends and folds the glow, and the whole submerged room fills with a shifting, dappled, watery light, exactly like sunlight playing on the floor of a swimming pool, but folded somehow deep into the heart of the earth. To move through it is to swim through liquid light in a place the sun itself has never once touched, the single lamp making a small bright travelling dream right in the very heart of the drowned and silent dark. Where the formations happen to be pale and pure and white, even a very little light can make the whole cave seem to glow softly from within itself. In chambers lined with white mineral, a single soft beam scatters and bounces from surface to surface to surface until the entire room holds a gentle, sourceless, ambient brightness, the pale stone quietly giving the light back again from every side at once, so that you find yourself standing in a soft white radiance with no clear source anywhere to be found. It is the very opposite of the deep black dark zone, and it carries its own particular peace, a luminous, weightless, floating calm, as though you had somehow stepped bodily inside a cloud that had been quietly turned to stone, every surface around you breathing the faintest glow back into air that has never in all its existence known the day. The textures of a cave run all the way from the harsh to the impossibly fine, and the hands learn them by degrees when the eyes can no longer help at all. There is the rough cold scrape of raw broken rock, the smooth silk of water-polished stone, the wet slickness of flowing mineral beneath the fingers, the strange brittle lace of fresh crystal, the soft yielding give of deep cave mud underfoot. Cavers come to know their whole dark world as much through their hands and their bodies as ever through their eyes, reading the rock by feel as they move through it, in much the way you yourself might find your way across a familiar dark room at home in the middle of the night. The cave teaches a particular kind of knowing that lives entirely in the skin, a close, careful, blind acquaintance with stone, learned by touch alone in the one place where ordinary sight at last runs fully out. Sound, too, takes on textures deep underground that it never quite has up in the open air above. A single clap in a great chamber rolls outward and returns. A whispered word in a low, tight passage carries oddly and surprisingly far. A single drip into a still black pool rings out clear as a struck bell. The particular shape of every room writes itself plainly in the way that room answers a sound, so that experienced cavers can almost hear the size of a space they cannot see at all. The long, slow, rolling reply of a vast high hall, the close, flat, deadened sound of a tight little crawl, the soft, watery hush of a flooded passage ahead. The cave speaks, in its way, entirely in echoes, quietly telling its dimensions and its distances to the listening ear, mapping its own hidden shape in sound for anyone who grows still and calm enough to truly listen in the dark. A single dropped pebble in a great hall can ring for seconds, the sound chasing itself around the curved walls before it fades. In a low passage, the same pebble lands with a flat, close knock and is gone at once. Cavers learn to throw a word ahead of them and judge from the answer whether the dark opens into a room or pinches shut, navigating by ear the way the bats do, building a picture of the unseen from nothing but the shape of returning sound, in the very deepest silences that listening turns inward, and the body's own quiet sounds begin to rise and fill the great stillness around it. With every last outside noise sealed firmly away by meters of solid rock, the only sounds left at all are the ones you carry within your own body. The long, slow draw of your own breath, the faint, steady pulse of blood moving softly in your ears, the small, soft sounds of your own living stillness. People who have sat entirely alone in the deep dark speak of this discovery afterward with a kind of awe, of becoming aware, in the perfect and absolute silence, of the soft, tireless machinery of their own life going on within them, the steady heartbeat that ordinarily goes wholly unheard, now made suddenly plain and clear in the surrounding silence. It is an oddly tender thing, to be left alone at last with only the gentle sound of your own life, in a hush so deep and so entire that nothing else at all remains. That profound quiet has drawn the seekers of stillness for as long as there have been caves on the earth to enter. Across very many cultures and ages, those people looking for silence and for depth, for prayer, for clear thought, for the simple healing absence of the world's endless noise, have gone down into caves to find it waiting there for them. The hermit alone in the rock, the seeker in the cave, the meditator in the still mountain hollow, again and again all through human history, whenever people have most wanted to truly still the restless mind, they have turned to the one reliable place where the whole loud world finally goes completely silent and still. There is a deep reason the cave appears in so very many of the old stories as a place of vision and of rest. It offers what almost nowhere else on the whole earth can, a deep, sealed, sheltering, healing silence, the entire noise of life set gently and completely aside. And that same sealed and sheltering quiet folds in close around you now, the world's whole noise set softly aside, only the slow sound of your own breath left in the cool and patient dark. The way a cave holds both warmth and cold makes it a true refuge in every season of the year, and creatures almost beyond counting have always known this in their bones. In the high heat of summer, the cave is a deep, cool pocket of relief. In the bitter depth of winter, it is markedly warmer than the frozen killing world outside, its steady, mild air a perfect shelter from the cold. This is precisely why so very many animals choose to den and shelter in caves through the very hardest months of the year. Great bears sleeping out the long winter, bats clustering together through the deepest cold, countless smaller creatures all gathering where the temperature simply never swings to the deadly extremes of the surface world above. The cave is a haven from the wheeling seasons themselves, one of the few places where the year's full harshness can never quite reach in, holding its single mild and faithful air like a sheltering hand through every storm that rages overhead. For the animals that winter deep within it, the cave's perfect stillness shapes a profound and lovely kind of rest. A bat in true hibernation banks its entire body almost to the very point of stopping, its small heart beating only a few faint times in a whole minute, its breath nearly ceasing altogether, its tiny life banked low like a covered ember through all the long cold months, sustained by the even cave air that never once forces it to spend more warmth than it has so carefully stored. It hangs there in the dark, utterly and perfectly still, sleeping a sleep so deep that it borders closely on suspension itself, simply sleeping out the whole long winter in the deep unchanging calm. There is a real and profound peace in that single image. A small warm creature given the most perfect shelter, resting so very deeply that time itself seems to pause and wait around it there in the dark. Its body cools until it nearly matches the cave air, and the chemistry of its blood shifts to let it survive on the thin store of fat it carried in at the close of autumn. To wake even once in deep winter costs it dearly, burning days of fat in a single hour, so the even unchanging cold of the cave is itself a kind of mercy, asking the small sleeper to spend as little as it can. It hangs head down from a single clawed grip that needs no muscle to hold, a warm coal banked in stone, waiting out the dark for a far-off spring it cannot feel, but somehow trusts is coming. Whole species have shaped the entire pattern of their lives around the deep rhythm of the cave. Some creatures spend their days deep down in the dark and emerge only under the cover of full night. Others live their whole lives below and never once leave the cave at all from birth to death. Still others, like certain bats, migrate across truly great distances to gather in particular caves at particular seasons, returning year upon year to the very same dark room as faithfully and as surely as any bird returns to its old nesting ground. The cave is woven deep into the oldest patterns of their lives, a single fixed and reliable point in a wide and wandering world, a place of return and of rest and of shelter that countless long generations of them have kept faith with across far more years than any single one of them could ever know or measure. The plants of the cave's dim edge keep their own quiet faith with what little light they are given. In the dim twilight zone near the entrance, ferns and mosses and pale-leaning seedlings lean toward the distant glow, growing flatter and broader and thinner to catch every last scrap of the failing light, surviving on a tiny fraction of what their bolder cousins out in the full sun would ever need to live. Some can hold on with the very faintest gleam, clinging to the rock at the very threshold of the dark, green and frail and entirely undemanding. They are a living lesson in sufficiency, these undemanding plants of the dim border, asking so very little of the world and making so very much of so faint and so failing a light, keeping their soft green life going on right at the final edge of the deep night beyond. Even the fine soil and the settled sediment on a cave floor can hold real treasures of the deep past. The fine layers of mud and dust that settle in a cave over the long ages trap pollen and seeds, and the tiny scattered remains of long-vanished life, sealing them all away in the still, cool, sheltered dark where they keep almost perfectly for many thousands of years. By carefully reading these settled layers, scientists can reconstruct the whole forests and meadows that once grew green above a particular cave, the very climate that shaped and watered them, the slow turning of entire landscapes through the long reaches of deep time. The cave floor becomes a kind of slow archive, a faithful record of the whole living world that flourished overhead, written in dust and pollen and held motionless in the dark long after the forests it remembers have changed past all knowing. Some caves preserve the very gentlest traces it is possible to imagine, the faint marks of creatures that did no more than simply pass through. On the soft floors of certain caves lie the fossilized tracks of animals that walked there in the deep and distant past, their footprints pressed once into wet silt that later set as firm as the stone around it. The padding trail of ancient paws, the long slither of something low to the ground, the small prints of birds, the crossing trail of a creature moving softly through the dark on some errand of its own, a full 100,000 years ago and more. The cave kept these utterly fleeting marks as nothing on the surface ever possibly could have, turning a single moment's quiet passage into a lasting record that outlived the creature, and then the species, and then the very world it walked through. One short journey across the dark held faithfully forever in stone. The more closely the scientists look, the more they find that caves are among the very greatest keepers of the entire planet's long memory. Bone and footprint, pollen and trapped ancient ice, the finely layered climate record held in every single growing column of stone. The cave faithfully saves what the storm-scoured surface always loses, sheltering the fragile past safely in its cool, dark, unchanging stillness across the ages. To explore a deep cave is, in a very real and literal sense, to read the private diary of the earth itself, kept faithfully and continuously in one of the few places on the whole planet where the weather and the long, slow grinding of time simply could not reach in to erase it. There is something deeply reassuring in that single thought, to know that the world keeps such careful and faithful records of its own long story, holding it all safe in the deep silence of the rock and losing almost nothing at all to the dark. The exploration of caves is one of the very last great adventures left in this close-mapped and well-charted world, and it is done entirely by patient, hard-won inches. Cavers crawl and climb and squeeze and swim their careful way through narrow passages that the earth itself never meant for any human body to enter, paying out their thin surveying lines metre by careful metre, sketching the dark room by room as they go, often spending many days and nights underground to reach the very farthest places. It is slow, careful, demanding, and often uncomfortable work, carried out in cold and wet and absolute darkness. And yet it is precisely how nearly everything we know of the entire underground world has been learned, one single hard-won metre of dark passage at a time. There are people who give the better part of their lives to mapping the deep dark, drawn back to it again and again, charting the silent country below where no one has ever been. What draws them so steadily down into the dark is genuinely hard to put into plain words, but it has a great deal to do with the deep peace of the place itself. Cavers speak again and again of the silence, of the stillness, of the strange and powerful sense of being gently cradled deep inside the body of the earth, far from all the noise and rush and pressure of the busy surface world. Down there, below the reach of every phone and every clock and the whole relentless press of the ordinary day, in the cool, even air and the perfect total silence, there is a particular kind of rest that is genuinely hard to find anywhere else at all. A deep feeling of being held, sheltered, set entirely apart from everything that ever hurries or demands or weighs on the mind. For all its cold and all its dark, the cave can be one of the most profoundly peaceful places on the whole of the earth, and those who know it best return to it the way a tired person returns at last to a deep and dreamless sleep. With the lamp switched off, there is nothing at all for the eye, nothing for the ear but water and breath, and the constant tug of weather and light and hurry that fills every waking hour above simply falls away, leaving the mind with almost nothing to push against. Some describe a deep calm settling over them within minutes, the body unclenching, the thoughts going still for want of anything to react to. It is the rare place where the world makes no demand, and the people who love caves speak of that release more than of any chamber or formation. The simple, whole-body relief of being somewhere that wants nothing from them. The maps that those cavers make of the dark are strangely beautiful things in their own right. A cave survey is a careful, loving drawing of a place that almost no other human being will ever see with their own eyes. Every passage and chamber and plunging shaft recorded in fine, precise lines. The whole tangled, three-dimensional knot of the cave flattened at last onto a flat sheet of paper through long and considerable skill. To look one over is to see the true hidden shape of a piece of the living earth laid bare and legible. The branching, looping, plunging architecture that the water dissolved out of solid rock across uncounted ages, rendered readable to human eyes at last. These maps are among the very few real portraits we have of the deep underground, drawn by hand in the dark, each single one of them a small act of devotion to a place that gives back to its devoted explorers almost nothing at all but stillness and silence and stone. Sometimes the cavers break through into rooms that genuinely humble even them. There are accounts, told softly afterward, of explorers breaking suddenly through some final crack into chambers so vast and so perfectly and richly decorated that they could only stand together in complete silence. Great soaring halls hung everywhere with countless formations, utterly untouched since the very dawn of time, never once seen before by any living eye in all the ages. To be the first human being ever to stand in such a place, to bring the very first light it has ever known into a darkness that is millions upon millions of years old, is among the rarest experiences left to anyone anywhere on the whole earth. And then, in time, the lamps move on, and the deep dark closes softly in again behind them, and the great room returns once more to the perfect stillness it has always kept, a little less wholly unknown now perhaps, but no less serene than it ever was. Some of the very deepest caves take whole weeks to explore fully, and reaching their farthest depths becomes a slow expedition down into the body of the planet itself. The teams descend in careful stages, setting up their camps far down in the dark, sleeping in chambers many hundreds of meters below the distant surface, working their slow way steadily downward over days and days toward the deepest known point of all. To sleep in such a place is a strange and a deeply peaceful thing, wrapped warm against the even unchanging air, in a silence and a darkness more complete and more total than any ordinary night up above could ever offer, with whole kilometers of solid rock standing silently between you and the open sky. The body, given such perfect dark and such perfect silence, sinks down into a rest as deep as the place that holds it, cradled by the deep earth in a sleep without any dawn. The instruments that cavers carry down with them now have turned the mapping of the dark into a fine and exacting science, with lasers that measure distance precisely by light, with delicate sensors that read the makeup of the air, with careful compasses and inclinometers. The modern explorers map the whole underground in a detail that the earlier generations could only ever have dreamed of, building precise three-dimensional models of vast caves that no single eye could ever hope to take in whole. And yet, for all the careful technology they carry, in the end it still comes down to one person, alone in the dark, far underground, moving carefully through the silent stone, the very oldest kind of true exploration there is, still carried out in the last truly hidden country left on Earth by the small, steady light of a single lamp. What all of it reveals, again and again and again, is just how very much of it all still remains entirely unknown. For every single cave that is mapped, others surely still wait undiscovered in the dark. For every passage that is finally charted, others branch silently off it into the blackness, unentered and unseen. The whole underground world is so genuinely vast and so deeply hidden that we have almost certainly seen only the smallest fraction of it so far, and new wonders are still found within it every single year. New rooms, new pale creatures, new fine records of the deep past. It is a humbling and at the very same time a deeply hopeful thing to live out a life on a planet that still holds so many wholly undiscovered rooms, so very much hidden beauty waiting silently in the dark for someone someday perhaps to bring it at last a first gentle light. Far below, the undiscovered rooms wait on in their darkness, untroubled and unhurried, while you rest in the cool and the deep stillness and ask nothing at all of the night. The long relationship between human beings and caves runs deeper into our whole story than almost any other, threading all the way back to the very beginning of us. People sheltered in caves, painted in caves, buried their dead with care in caves, worshipped in caves, hid in caves, and told stories of caves in very nearly every single culture that has ever existed anywhere on Earth. The cave appears in the oldest myths of all as a place of birth and of death and of deep transformation, as a doorway leading through to other worlds, as both a refuge and a profound mystery. It is woven so deeply into the human imagination that the very idea of going down into the earth, into the dark, still carries a weight and a resonance that few other places anywhere can match. The deep ancestral memory, perhaps, of all the long ages in which our own forebears found their safety and their shelter deep in the body of the rock. In countless traditions across the world, caves were held sacred, and many people standing in one still feel exactly why. All across the earth, caves have served as temples, as shrines, as places of long pilgrimage and of deep vision, where people went down to touch something far larger than themselves in the great hush of the underground dark. Statues were carved directly into living cave walls, altars were raised in the hush of cave chambers, whole vast sanctuaries were slowly built in the sheltered dark below. There has always been something in the silence and the depth and the held breath of a cave that has seemed to people, age after age, like an exactly fitting place for the sacred, a deep stillness that calms the restless mind and opens it, a darkness that feels far less like simple absence than like a vast, calm, waiting presence all around. Across the world the same instinct repeats, temples cut deep into living rock, their pillars and carved figures emerging from the cave wall by lamplight, shrines tucked into hillside hollows where pilgrims still come to sit in the dark, oracles and seekers who withdrew underground to listen for what the noise of the day drowned out. The cave appears again and again as the place where a person goes to be changed, to be born anew, to meet something larger, a threshold in story after story between the lit world and whatever lies beneath or beyond it. The growing light of human discovery has only ever deepened the wonder of caves and never once dispelled it. The more that science learns of caves, how they slowly form, what strange life lives within them, what deep past they so faithfully remember, the more genuinely remarkable they become to us, not the less. To truly understand that a single great chamber was dissolved out of solid rock by nothing but rain over 1,000,000 long years, that the pale, blind fish in its black pool traded its very eyes for touch across 1,000 slow generations, that the painting on its silent wall has waited there in the dark since the depths of the Ice Age. None of this hard-won knowledge flattens the mystery in the slightest. It only enriches and deepens it. The cave is one of those rare places where the more you come to truly know, the more astonishing it grows, and the deeper still the calm wonder it stirs in anyone who stops to truly consider it. There is a particular and deep comfort in just how separate the cave remains from the whole rushing world above. Down in the dark, the busy surface and all of its noise and all of its endless hurry simply do not reach in at all. No traffic, no glowing screens, no clamour of the crowded day. Only the cool, even air and the slow drip of ancient water somewhere in the black. It is one of the very few places left anywhere on Earth where the entire modern world is shut wholly and completely out, sealed away behind many meters of cold stone, and where the tired and restless mind can finally come fully to rest in a silence as old and as deep as the rock itself. Even to imagine such a place, even only to picture yourself resting within it, is to feel some real measure of that deep separation right now. The day's whole noise growing faint and far, the great stillness folding gently in, the deep stillness of the earth gathering you up. The cave has always been, at its very deepest heart, a place of shelter, and that is perhaps the single, deepest and oldest thing it has to offer any of us. Through every age and through every danger, whenever the world above grew suddenly harsh and cruel, the answer was so very often this same simple thing: to go down into the cool dark of the sheltering earth and be safe within it. The cave sheltered our distant ancestors from the killing cold and the storm and the long dangerous night. It shelters its own blind creatures still, faithfully, through every winter and every wheeling season. And it offers even now, even only in the gentle imagining of it, a deep sense of refuge that lies very, very deep in all of us. The old bone-deep feeling of being safely held, protected, fully enclosed within a silence that nothing at all can disturb. To rest even in the simple thought of a cave is to rest, in a way, in the oldest and surest shelter there has ever been. And so the deep dark of the cave is not in the least a thing to be feared, but rather a thing to be gently held by. It is cool, and it is even, and it is unchanging, sealed away safely from every storm that rages above, silent but for the slow water somewhere far off, and dark with a deep darkness that asks absolutely nothing of you, and lets the tired eyes and the restless mind at last fully and completely rest. The pale creatures of the deep dark live their whole gentle lives in perfect peace down within it. The great painted herds sleep on undisturbed across all the long ages. The slow stone grows its pale gardens on and on in the perfect stillness, and the cave goes on holding all of it, gently and faithfully in the cool dark, exactly as it has done in countless rooms through ages past. And there is room within it too tonight for you. A deep and sheltered place to set down the whole weight of the day at last and simply, fully rest. And the final wonder of all the wonders of caves may be the very simplest one of all, and the one that lies nearest of all to where you are softly drifting now. It is only this, that in a world so endlessly full of noise and motion and harsh light, the old earth keeps hidden within itself, everywhere, hidden just beneath the busy surface of things, these countless chambers of a nearly perfect stillness, cool and dark and silent, asking nothing of anyone, changing only across the slow span of whole ages, holding their deep stillness faithfully whether any living soul ever enters them or not. They are always there, those still rooms in the sleeping rock, waiting unseen beneath the green fields and the loud cities and the high mountains alike, a vast and silent reserve of pure calm folded carefully into the very body of the planet. And something deep in us somehow knows them, and is deeply soothed by the simple thought of them, and reaches out toward that deep stone calm as toward a kind of home it half remembers. You do not need to remember any of it now. The soft colours of the deep stone, the names of the deepest caves, the slow drip of the water building its pale towers in the dark, let them all soften and loose. Let them drift gently away, in just the way the cave itself lets everything settle in its own slow time, requiring nothing of any of it, keeping what it keeps and gently releasing all the rest. You carried these wonders a little way down into the dark with you, and that alone is more than enough. They will keep, safe in the cool and the dark whether you hold on to them or not. And if you are still here, drifting softly at the very edge of sleep, another slow journey is already waiting there for you on the screen, ready whenever you might want it, or never at all. There is nothing you need to do about it now. It will simply wait in its own deep stillness, the way the cave waits, untroubled and unhurried, for as long as you like. Let the cave hold you now. The air is cool, and even against your skin, the same mild warmth it has faithfully kept for 10,000 years. The dark all around is soft and complete and kind, asking nothing at all of your closed and resting eyes. Somewhere far off in the black, a single drop of water lets go and falls, and the small clear sound of it travels out and comes back rounded and faint, and then the deep silence folds closed again, whole and unbroken. Your breath is slow now. The cool stone holds steady all around you. There is nowhere at all to go and nothing at all to carry. Let your body grow heavy now, the way the slow stone settles. Let the whole day drain softly away into the dark, like water sinking softly into the waiting ground. The cave keeps its long stillness. It has kept it for ages beyond counting, and it will keep it long after this single night is gone. You can let go of everything now and simply rest inside it, here in the cool and the quiet, held safe by the patient earth. Breathe in the still, clean air. Breathe out the last of the day. The dark is kind. The silence is deep. Nothing here asks anything of you at all. Rest now in the cool dark of the earth where it is calm and even and still, and now 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.